and welcome to the Bullcast Podcast. I'm Katie Pickler, and with me is Court Winsett.
Hello, Katie.
And Cameron Spann.
Howdy.
Happy almost Valentine's Day.
Oh, wow. Is it really almost Valentine's? Guys, I haven't even gotten her a present.
Have y'all seen the things that it's like, oh my gosh, like I've been with this person forever. They have not asked to be my Valentine this year. I don't care about that. It's kind of assumed, right?
I mean,
Yeah.
I don't know that I've ever asked to be her Valentine at all, ever. I mean, like,
You're already her Valentine.
be my Valentine. I've always
kind of
thought that the
assumed,
expression,
right?
hey, would you be my Valentine? I've always thought that was kind of a stupid expression and a stupid question. And I think you're stupid if you ask it. No, I'm just kidding. That might be a little excessive.
I mean, there's a lot of opinions about Valentine's Day. Like, it's a Hallmark holiday to sell flowers and chocolate, greeting cards.
Yeah, listen, I like the idea of the holiday itself being a day to celebrate your loved one and your special person and whatnot. The phrase, be my Valentine. I'm like, St. Valentine's Massacre? I mean, what are we talking about here?
I think Waffle House still has reservations if you'll need it. I crack up so much with that. But I also like, you should celebrate the person you're with randomly. It doesn't need to be necessarily on a holiday. Honestly, like if we do Valentine's dinner, then it's not going to be on Valentine's Day because it's too crazy.
Yeah, that's how we roll.
People are going to start thinking that our topic somehow is related to Valentine's Day, and it's not.
It's just happened to be the day before.
But I think Valentine's Day is a bigger deal for people who are dating
Yes,
than it is
it
for
is.
people who are
Yes, I agree. It's not necessarily married. I think it's super cute when they do like Valentine's dances, like father-daughter, stuff like that. Like, and I think it's cute, like get your daughter like a box of chocolates or a little treat, but it shouldn't be a break the bank, like a big deal. And again, this episode is not about Valentine's, but we get wrapped up in like what social media, the expectations, like all of that. It's just kind of saying, hey, you appreciate the person that you're spending your time with, the people you love.
Yeah.
Our topic is not Valentine's, but it is on marriage, and that kind of ties in.
Like if you do
Love and
Valentine's
marriage.
right, then you might eventually convince your significant other to marry you. And then once you're
If you
married,
do Valentine's wrong, you might end your marriage.
True.
An episode we've definitely done back in a major deep depth of the vault.
let's say 2020.
The early days
The
of
early
Bullcast.
days. Because this is episode 245. Y'all, 245. That's crazy. This episode is called Navigating Bank Accounts in Marriage. And so I know that several, years ago did an episode that was really revolving around you're getting married, talking about prenups, talking about how to merge your finances, all this stuff like that. So we want to touch on that again, but this is going to be more of you're married now, maybe it's your second marriage, maybe you've been married for a while and now it's adjustments of what's working, what's not. Because you do have that adjustment period of going from single life to married for 5, 10, 15, 20 years, to married with kids, all of that.
Yeah.
So we're going to try and touch on this one a little bit different angle. And because obviously sitting on this podcast, I've been married for 5 years, 14 for you.
Coming on 15, yep.
Yep. And then
It'll be 30 this year.
yeah, so you've got, I would say like, we've got a good balance here with that.
Planning a cruise for our 30th this year.
Okay, so we're going to start with our list, the best romantic movies of all times. That's a broad. I'm already going to
Best
disagree.
Romance movies of all time. Of all time. Wow. We have the definitive list, ladies and gentlemen. Okay, you kick it off, Katie, because I hate this movie. So you start.
Casablanca. Here's looking at you, kid.
This is the start of a beautiful friendship, I think, is in there.
Yeah.
I mean, like, which ones were real? Which ones actually
It's a very classic, iconic. You see the image of them by the airplane. Like,
How is this one of the best romance movies of all time when at the end of the movie she gets on a plane and leaves him? I'm sorry. Spoiler alert, but come on. How, that's a very unhappy ending to me. Roman Holiday. I've never seen it.
Audrey Hepburn.
I love Audrey Hepburn. I don't think I've actually sat through an entire Audrey Hepburn movie, but I do love her.
These, for the most part, are not modern romance movies at all. This is much more.
Well, I mean, so far we do
So
get
far.
to.
There's a couple
we
of-
get to some huge romance movies in just a second that are newer for sure. The next one is Pride and Prejudice and Zombies. I have seen and loved. I saw the movie. It was great.
This is not the zombie one.
Oh, this is just the regular one.
The
no.
regular.
Oh no! Is this the one that had Colin Firth in it?
That's the OG, and then
Yeah.
you have the Keira Knightley one, which is newer.
Yeah.
Okay.
So it's been done a couple of times.
Next on the list would be a more modern one, The Notebook, Rachel McAdams, and
Ryan Gosling.
Yeah,
I mean, that's a great one.
It's super romantic.
This is a straight.
You're a bird.
This is a pure romance movie. I heard the phrase "takeout" and The Notebook before Netflix and chill was a thing. You want to get some takeout and watch The Notebook? Used to be big.
It's a cute story because it talks about from different generations when they're older and then when they're younger, their love story. And so it's a good movie. It's a tearjerker.
Yeah. Whose turn is it?
You took 2 in a row. I just took the last one.
Titanic. The note from Nicole in here is, where's Luke? Because we have an employee here. Luke, he's actually my assistant, and he is obsessed with the real Titanic and everything. Took a course on it in college, loves it. Yeah, this is the best romance, and she didn't make room for him on the piece of wood. That's always the debate of, was there room for him on the door?
And lately I've seen several articles that are like, they did a scientific study, sponsored by Cameron and
Cameron.
James Cameron.
Not Cameron.
He has a submarine or something.
And he confirms that they couldn't both fit on the door. I'm like, that's bull. She could have moved over. They could have fit on the door.
Best romance movies of all times, we always think of a romance as being a happily ever after. And some romance stories are tragic.
When you consider
Romeo and Juliet
being the first one that comes to mind for me in terms of tragedy, but also romance. Does that mean it's my turn?
Mm-hmm.
Because I love this movie. So The Princess Bride. That's all.
No notes. Just a great movie.
10 out of 10, no notes. Yeah.
Next would be Moonstruck, starring Cher.
Never seen it.
I've actually never seen it. It's on my list. I don't know why I've never seen it. I feel like I recognize the scenes from it, but I've never seen it.
I'm trying to figure out if I can say this without raising the ire of people, of our listeners and or our boss. I don't know what his opinion on the subject is, but not a giant fan of Cher. Nicolas Cage, he either nails it for me or he just absolutely terrible and atrocious and annoys me. So
depends on what cycle of life Nicolas Cage is in.
Yeah, I'm very hesitant to watch this movie because I'm not sure if it would just absolutely bug the heck out of me or if I would like it.
Sleepless in Seattle is a great movie. It's another feel good.
No notes.
The Way We Were is another great one.
The Way We Were. I've never seen it. I've never seen The Way We Were.
It's great.
Yeah.
It's another classic.
Okay, one that we have seen is Dirty Dancing.
Yeah, 100%.
Finally.
Yes. Nobody puts baby in the corner.
I mean, it's good.
It is a classic. It is the
when
best.
He raises her up in the dance, it's everything.
You have to overlook several things, like, for instance, the fact that you've got a 20-something dancer that's romancing a 16-year-old, or at least she's supposed to be 16 in the movie.
Yikes.
It's a little bit awkward and crazy.
Recently, we had a father-daughter dance. You were talking about that, Valentine's one, at our church, and that song came on, and Stella ran, and I raised her up during the big part of that song, and it was awesome.
That's super cool. That
is cute.
Super cool. And Catskills, romantic setting, dancing. There's just all sorts of
What show do you think of when you hear Catskills?
I mean, I think of the
Marvelous Miss Maisel.
That's it. That's the one. Yeah. Isn't that random?
Yeah.
Marvelous Miss Maisel. The last one on the list, Ghost. Absolutely.
Another Patrick Swayze.
Indeed.
Yeah.
For a minute there, he was like the king of romance, king of romantic.
And then
movies.
Unchained Melody, that's just obviously gets everybody thinking. This is not at all encompassing of all the best romance movies. There are a ton, and it depends on, do you like the rom-coms? Do you like the tear-jerkers? Do you like the classics? I love this time of year because then it's all the Galantines, where it's all gal pal movies. So many stuff. Watch a romantic movie this Valentine's Day. So now, switching gears, let's talk about money.
Money. Okay, so here is my thing that I have found later in our marriage as our kids are grown, and that is kind of a difference in the way spouses might approach finances. That is, we do still operate with a joint account, but more than that now, we joint credit more than anything. We have a checking account. All of our paychecks go into one single checking account. We have joint savings account, and then we have our investment accounts. Most of our expenses go on our credit card, and then we pay it off at the end of every month.
Yeah.
But we each have our own card. One of us doesn't have a problem with giving our credit card to our children. And the other one, and I'm not saying who gives it out and who doesn't, but one of us has no problem giving our kids our credit card number. And the other one of us is a little bit more conservative in terms of how and when he lets the children
There, you let it go. I know who is who.
Kids can add a whole different wrinkle into the way couples manage their finances. And you may have very different ideas and opinions about how you should handle your finances, in relation to your kids and what you should be spending on your kids. Katie, you just about to have children. I wonder if y'all have had any talks yet about the way, are you going to spoil your kids? What's going to be the deal when those kids come along?
Who knows?
Are you going to let your parents spoil your kids?
Of course.
Are you going to be able to stop your parents from
Nope,
spoiling
no,
your
I will
kids.
not be able to stop parents from spoiling. And then obviously this will be the first grandkids on my husband's side. So I'm sure that's going to have some spoiling as well. But kids definitely throw a wrench into a lot of financial things. And it's and how you spend on said kids. Because when you're married, then you kind of have an agreement on this is what we're going to spend on our living expenses. This we're going to spend on clothing. I think that you kind of start a new round of serious conversations and potential for fights with even when they're newborns, because it's like, why do they need another outfit? Why do they need another this? You know, that's a conversation.
It's
what daycare are you going to send them to? Like,
it's definitely an area for there needs to be frank conversations about what your expectations are for the children. Are they going to go to daycare, or are you going to get a nanny, or is one of you going to stay home? How are your funds going to be used to fund those things? Do you need to start saving for a private education, or do you expect your kids to go to a public education?
Are your kids going to be a part of soccer, basketball, baseball, all the things? Or are you only going to let your kids do one thing?
Are you going to want to expose your kids to the arts? Do you want them to dance? Do you want them to have music lessons in some instrument? And then you already mentioned, but I think it's worth re-mentioning, just clothes. I cannot tell you, and this wasn't just me. This was me and Robin. I think we went probably, I don't know, 24, 25 years where we weren't buying ourselves any clothes, because any money that went toward clothing budget went toward our kids' clothes because they were constantly outgrowing. And Robin does like to shop for a child. She does like shopping for some clothes.
I'm sorry, Court, but she's already called herself an aunt to my children that aren't even here yet. So I apologize if her credit card's now for my kids.
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like I have a similar setup to Court. One bank account. We have 2 debit cards. We each have one. 2 credit cards. We each have one.
Yeah.
And so basically, nothing is spent that the other doesn't know about. That's just how it works for us. I mean, if it's like Christmas time and it's like secret stuff, Abby's just like, don't go like browsing too hard at like the bills or at Amazon. But yeah, I mean, we share everything. It's made life easier for us. But I know other couples where it works well when they have their own bank account, you know.
Obviously, when we first got married, we still kind of have that same structure where we have one joint account that's where our paychecks go to. That's where bulk of everything comes out of that. But we both still have our individual checking and savings accounts. Again, it's a combination. If we had big expenses, then you don't get to hoard money in your individual account. That's got to go towards the main account.
Yeah.
We have very much adopted the philosophy of everything goes on a credit card to make sure for protection purposes, just to get the perks and points, things like that.
Oh, yeah.
And so we do it a little differently. I have 3 credit cards that I primarily use. Daniel is the authorized user on most of those, so he has access to them. And then he's got a credit card that I'm not the authorized user on, but it's just kind of, he uses that as his, he pays that off. Again, we'll see how that evolves. But it's always interesting when, like, you know, we'll go somewhere, he's like, oh, I'll get it on mine. And I'm like, it's all the same. It's all the same money. We're all spending the same money. So obviously, you know, it's kind of like your financial situation. You need to check in on it. You need to evaluate things every so often. You need to be looking at what's working, what's not working. Having it all together does help with transparency to avoid fights, but it also helps with making sure you're not both double paying for a DoorDash account or you're not double paying for Netflix, that things are actually more efficient because you can see it all in one place versus, well, I paid the water bill this month. Well, I paid it too. Because I can tell you, they're not going to call you and be like, oh, you double paid us. They'll just, they'll apply a credit. And so you can realize it, but then y'all could be putting more money places than what it really needs to go.
We have done both ways. There was a long period of time where we each had individual accounts, but we also had a joint account that our joint bills were paid out of. And so we would have our own little spend it for yourself money kind of account. Yeah. This was back when we were trying not to use credit cards. So most of what we paid for in cash or using our debit card. It was a long time ago. So we had our own accounts that, for instance, if we did want to buy a present for the other one, it would come out of my personal account. But most of our spending, the bulk of our spending went out of our joint account. But nowadays, I think we both still have those individual accounts, but I don't think that we really use them for anything. They just sit there unused.
See, and that's another thing of kind of cleaning up stuff. Like, do you still really need those accounts? Number one, if it's not charging you anything and the money's not getting eaten up, then okay, it's just you determine. Do you want to deal with that, or would you rather just put it all together? If you are getting charged, you may want to look into that and be like, is this making sense that I've got $1,000 in this account, but I'm getting charged $5-10 every month? And so so it doesn't make sense. Close it, add it to your other account. So that's kind of a maintenance to look at that. The number one cause of divorce out there, which I made that joke before, how you spend your Valentine's could end a marriage or not. But the number one fight that causes divorce is with finances. When you get married, your debt is y'all's debt and your financial situation is y'all's financial situation. That's what's agreed upon. And, just again, a little friendly reminder, if you've got that credit card and you've allowed your spouse to be an authorized user, they can figure out what the balance is on that card by going to their credit report and seeing that card.
Oh, yeah.
So you can't hide that, I've racked up $10,000, $12,000 in debt on this credit card and think they won't find out. They will find out if they're checking their credit report.
Yeah, if you're on their card.
If you're an authorized user. Now, if you have a separate, they're not going to be able to figure that out. But we are not condoning financial infidelity is what we did an episode about. And that's where you're hiding money. And so, yes, we are oozing you with love and respect the day before Valentine's Day and go and question your spouse. It's not a romantic topic, but the decision to combine bank accounts or keep them separate can affect everything from your daily coffee runs to your retirement nest egg. That's why it's helpful to take a look at how the simple banking choices can influence your relationship long-term goals. Now, to Court's point, and Cam hasn't gotten to this yet, but you're starting to get there. Your oldest is now probably at the point where she may go to the movies with friends and need money. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And so it's structuring your accounts so that kids can have access to it, but maybe they don't need to have access to the whole pot. Maybe there's a separate account that it's like, this is the bank account that the kids have access to. No. Okay.
100%
Court's
no.
saying no.
Absolutely not.
Or
I would never give my children. Guilty. I mentioned that my wife has been prone to give our kids her credit card number, but that's been when the kids were much, much older.
Okay.
And I don't agree with doing that because they will abuse it. But no. I would never give the kids access to our bank account. That would be a hard no.
Growing up, I had a credit card that had a very low balance on it. And it was limit, yes.
Yeah.
And it was attached to my mom. So she got the bill. She saw it, but I was only allowed to spend I think it was $500 a month.
Yeah.
And that's where then she didn't have to worry about giving me money every time. That's my money that I could go and spend to go to the movies, to go to dinner, to do different things like that.
Yeah. So a credit card, I have known people to give their kids you can give them a limit, very low limit credit card or something like that to give them basically spending ability without having to give them cash every time they want to go out or something like that. But obviously it gives you very little control over what they spend that money on. When I was growing up, I think I got a $10 a week allowance. Mm-hmm. That was my spending money until I was probably 16. I don't know. I didn't, things are way different now than they were when I was a kid.
For Christmas, we got Stella an Apple Watch, and you know how you can pay with your watch or phone and there's Apple Cash?
Yeah.
It's really easy to give her allowance now because from my phone, we just send it to her watch. Everywhere takes wireless payments. Everywhere, even gas stations. And so it's really convenient. She's not having to tap into a bank account. There's no credit card. It's just basically a little debit card on her
watch. Yeah,
that's cool.
That's perfect. That's great.
Okay, so when you're looking at kind of navigating bank accounts in marriage, obviously it's, we've done multiple episodes talking about which bank to work with. There are some reasons why people want to have separate institutions that they have bank accounts with, that they want to keep. Maybe they want to keep an account open at a credit union because then that can really help them down the road for car loans, for different things like that. So you may have money that's in a credit union. You may want to work with Wells Fargo because you've then got an account with your mother that's at Wells Fargo. So there's reasons sometimes to have these different institutions that you have bank accounts with, but then you need to question it every so often and make sure, are you making your life more complicated? Or are you making it, can you simplify it and make it more one place you're working with?
Every time we get on the topic of banks and bank accounts, I go back to the idea that I feel somewhat like a dinosaur now in that, I feel like the way that Robin and I use our bank accounts is not the way that younger people are using their bank accounts. And it's certainly not the way that our kids use their bank accounts. Although I will say that our children, they were raised by a banker. And so I think that our kids very much they all have their own checking account that they get money deposited into. And a lot of employers still require that you have a checking account or a savings account that you can receive your direct deposit for your payroll into. And so I know that people still have them and still use them. And to that extent, I think it's also important that your bank have options for you to have an account for your child so that your child can learn how to use their own bank account.
Yeah.
I'm not giving them access to my bank account again, to be clear, but having a custodial account for your child child so that you can say like, look, we're going to put this money in your savings account and so on and so forth. And this is how you save, and teach them how those accounts work and so forth. I think that that's important, but I don't think, I'm not aware of any bank that doesn't have that as an option. So I don't think that that's necessarily a problem. The only time that obviously you still have to consider the fact that banks are only insured to cover deposits that you have with them up to a certain limit. Mm-hmm. You don't want to have one bank where all your eggs are in one basket at one bank, because they will not necessarily, depending on how they're titled and so forth, the bank may not be able to cover your total deposits. If you have, say, $1 million all in one account and that bank goes under and you lose that money, then it's only insured up to a certain level.
So do y'all see, or is this just what I see, that you have a bunch of friends that are still, they're married and they're Venmoing back and forth each other, like Bill?
I don't see that.
That's interesting.
Yeah, like I'll see, like, of course, a lot of times people switch now to like emojis or they've gone private. Right. But before, when it was like nobody really did private, you would see like for light bill, for mortgage bill, for things like that. And couples were Venmoing each other for these payments.
And I know we're about to get into this more, but that system would not work for me and Abby.
Yeah.
Almost this fairness system, like you owe the light bill this month or whatever, and you're just, I don't know. Well, we just stir all our money in one pot. You don't know whose is whose, and you're just...
I don't want to go down this rabbit hole, but I will touch on the fact that if you do get separated, then a lot of times, and if you're passing like child support or things like for the kids' well-being, then a lot of times you may end up having a joint bank account that's for the care of the kids, because it's easier to transfer money that way for the well-being of the kid versus somebody having to write a check every month or things like that. So there's some aspects of, and Court's given me all kinds of perplexing look with that.
So here's a thing that...
He's like, no.
Well, usually if you are dealing with a couple where there's actual child support involved, then you absolutely want to write a check to whoever the person is that owes and pays child support, wants to make sure that they are writing a check to the person that they owe the child support and sending it. If your state has a centralized system that records all child support payments, then you want to make sure that you're paying through that system so that you get credit for those payments, so that if the other parent comes back later on and says you didn't pay, you have a record of when you did make your payments and so forth. So no, I would not be transferring money in and out of an account because of ease. You want to, if you're separated or divorced and you are legally required to make payments to the other parent, then make sure you have a record of those payments.
You heard it from Court. Okay, let's get through a couple of these things on what to consider when you're looking at merging bank accounts, maintaining bank accounts while married. Obviously, you've got the income gap. If there's a major salary difference between partners, you want to think about shipping it proportionally for joint expenses. Obviously, if it all comes into one pot, it doesn't matter. But remember, anytime somebody's income is changing, you need to navigate if somebody gets paid like big bonuses quarterly or commission checks. You've got to have your flow of funds that you're not relying on, every month we get X amount, when in reality it doesn't hit until the end of each quarter.
Mm-hmm. Well, not only that, but we, for instance, we had a conversation with somebody the other day that was saying, I might get a big bonus or a big check this month and then not get anything for 3 or 4 months.
Yeah.
Cyclical nature of the industry that he works in. If that's the case, you may have to plan. Maybe on an average I make this much per year, but if you know that there could be a dry spell in there for 4 or 5 months, you may need to plan that far in advance. Maybe your spouse has a more regular income, so you have to use that to...
And you have to use that to communicate, because I always think of Fun with Dick and Jane, and there's a couple other movies out there where the spouses have a situation where they lose their job and do not tell the other spouse, and so they keep spending as if the money's coming in.
Mm-hmm.
So you've got to say, hey, we're having a dry month, or I'm not sure if my commission check's going to be as big this month. And so you can prepare. And that's, again, why you have those different buckets. Other thing is financial baggage. If one partner has major debt, keeping some finances separate might protect the other person's credit score and assets. So where I did say when you're married, your debt is y'all's debt, there are particular situations where you may need to figure it out to help everybody out and figure out. But that goes to how you're filing your taxes, what the debt is. There's so many other things with that.
There are so many advantages to filing taxes jointly that I wonder if you're aware of the fact that you could be married and file separately, but you don't have all of those advantages for being married and filing jointly. You might wonder, well, why would anybody ever file separately if lose all of the advantages of being married and filing jointly? And the reason is, what if one of you has some major tax liabilities that the other one doesn't want to be liable for? Then you file separately to keep those things separate. But anyway, that's just sort of as an example, something.
Money management styles. If one of you tend to save every penny while the other is more of a spender, you might agree on a percentage of income that goes into a shared account while keeping personal funds separate. Court and I were a part of a meeting recently, and it was kind of joked, and I don't know the severity of it or not, but gambling, whether you're physically going to like a casino or you're doing sports betting, things like that. If there could be a spouse in your relationship who, you should just have one, but there should be somebody in this relationship with you,
sister-wives,
that has a spending problem. And so maybe they do not need to have access to the bank account that pays the mortgage and the light bill and things like that, because they may be tempted to dip into it to make another bet. And so that goes into knowing the behavioral finance aspect of the people in this relationship, because you can absolutely love your spouse, love who they are, but know that they cannot be trusted with the household budget. They cannot be trusted with the bills because they have a spending problem, whether it's gambling or actually spending and buying things.
Or drug abuse, any number.
Yeah, anything like that. And so you may have to separate bank accounts and take somebody off of an account to protect them.
Maybe they just like buying their daughter pretty dresses, and it becomes epidemic.
Career change. A partner who is still in school or changing fields might not be able to contribute equally to joint expenses, so you may need to figure out a more flexible arrangement in that case.
Yeah, okay. I'm sorry. I just keep going completely off topic, but did y'all know that, I was thinking about it. I started law school 20 years ago. That blows my mind. Because that was my second career. Law was my second career. I started law school 20 years ago. But yeah, we went through a stage as a couple where very much I was changing careers, and we had to completely renegotiate all of the way that we did all of our finances.
Yep.
Because
and I mean, a lot of stuff, it's still, with that, future planning, obviously, if you're planning to have kids or make other big life changes, you need to have shared goals. Like if you have all agreed, hey, we're going to start aggressively saving in our retirement account, or saving in an out of sight, out of mind account for a future down payment, or we want to start saving because we want to send our daughter to a private school, or whatever the goal is, everybody's got to be on board with that. Because then if it turns into, oh, well, my wife really wants to start saving for school, I really want this grill, oops, we can't save this month. Like, people can sabotage, and that goes back to that, revenge spending. It's like, I know you really want to save for this, but I actually really want this grill, which then that causes a whole other issue in a marriage if you're not on the same page.
So do you have a new grill that I'm not aware of, Katie?
No.
You seem to be a little bit obsessed with this grill
That's
idea.
just always my go-to of where somebody buys something that it's like, did we really need this? And that's the other thing is agreeing on home renovations. I think that's a big area that you may set a budget of, hey, we're gonna agree with this, but then if one spouse is managing the actual process and they come to them and say, hey, for an extra $1,000 you can have XYZ, making sure you're on the same page with that.
Yeah, we just went through that. And renovations never cost what the estimate is. Ever.
Never. Anytime especially when you have kids in this situation or not, you're going to have things that throw a wrench in it. You're going to have things that you have to then pivot and really adjust your budget, adjust your accounts. So a case for joint accounts. Trust and openness. It's one of the strongest arguments in favor of joint accounts is the transparency they provide. Again, a lot of people, the reason why they resist it is because they don't want somebody all up in their business on picking at them if they go to McDonald's 5 times a day. Or things like that. And so that's, again, a deeper conversation of if you really feel like that's, are there different ways you can do that? If you don't want somebody all up in your grill on everything, what can you do? When both partners have full access to the household finances, it can build trust, open communication about how money matters because they don't have any secrets about what they're spending. It's also easier to track for shared expenses like rent, utilities, and groceries.
Simplifying bill payments.
Yeah.
Obviously, that's probably, I think, the biggest reason to have a joint account is because if all of your joint bills come out of the joint account, then if you have a budget and you know how much your joint bills are going to be on a monthly basis, then you know how much you need to have in your joint account at a minimum on a monthly basis to pay those joint bills. Boom, you're done. Bob's your uncle.
Yeah.
Oh, go ahead.
Go ahead.
No,
yeah.
I was moving on. You go ahead.
And it's also making sure that somebody did it.
Yeah.
Because if you think, they're supposed to be paying the light bill, but they instead didn't have money because they were gambling.
Yeah.
If you have the joint account, you can see, the light bill got paid.
Yeah.
And
you can set auto bill pay and then...
You can set auto bill pay, but sometimes, if they change their software, then there's somebody else who can catch and be like, hey, I didn't see the MLG&W bill come out this month. What happened?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. What about the concept of teamwork? That's how Abby and I roll here. It says, for many couples, joint accounts represent a we're in this together attitude. This can help reinforce the idea of working towards common financial goals, whether it's saving for a home, planning for retirement, emergency fund, blah, blah, blah.
Okay, counter to all of that, though.
Let's argue.
Just because I'm feeling ornery.
Feeling froggy.
On the opposite side, separate accounts means that you don't have somebody up in your business all the time.
Sure.
You're a little bit more independent, obviously. It can potentially, there's an argument that a joint account can reduce money, like the drama, the tendency to potentially have conflict over money being spent or bills being paid. It also means that if they can't see every dime that you spend, then they're not as likely to be irritated by the way you spend money versus the way they spend money.
Yeah.
Right.
The joint account forces you to constantly talk about things.
Yeah.
Like, hey, I'm going to spend this much. I mean, if it's a small amount, it doesn't matter. But
yeah, you can't hide and be like, oh, I didn't really spend that much on it. Was on sale. Really, was it?
Yeah.
But I think that's a strong suit, is it forces you to talk constantly, which reinforces a marriage, right?
Of course, if you put it on a credit card, then they just see, oh, you had a credit card payment of $5,000. They can't really see the details.
What it's for, yeah.
Which then can make it kind of icky because it's like, well, what'd you spend that on? Stuff.
Here's one of the big things. Now, we do not advocate for letting a credit card balance run more than a month, right? You pay it off at the end of every month. We're big fans of that. If you are a couple that tends to carry credit card debt, then having separate credit card accounts, in other words, having separate debt, having separate checking accounts, having separate assets, when inevitably having all of these separate accounts leads to your marriage's demise, then it's really easy to separate all those debts and assets.
So if you keep it all separate, then you're one step ready for divorce.
If you ever do end up getting divorced, then obviously it's much easier to separate everything out.
Well, and the thing that was also listed in here is obviously if you are coming into a marriage and you've got substantial assets of your own that you want to keep separate, if you inherit assets, this will be a legal thing we kind of touch on. If you personally inherit assets, the second you put it into a joint account, it becomes joint assets. Yeah. So it is 1,000% fine if you inherit assets.
Take that money and put it in a separate account.
Separate account, your name only. Do not have your spouse on it. Yeah. And that gets kind of icky because some people are like, oh, but it's our money. But
no, it's not. It's not. Our money.
You personally inherited it. And
well, I mean, I guess that really depends on the intent of the person who left it to you.
Yeah.
If you're talking specifically about an inheritance, you may have somebody that specifically wanted you as an individual to receive this money and use it for yourself. They may designate at what purpose they hope this money will serve in their testamentary device, whether that's a will or a trust. They may say, I want it to go to this person. I want them to use it for this. Whether or not that's binding on you may completely depend on the way they set it up or, whether it is in a will or in a trust. It depends. But the fact that they stated that may be enough motivation for you to go, you know what, this person wanted me to use this money for this. This is the way I'm going to use it. I'm going to keep this separate. This is going to be my money that I use to accomplish blank and do that. That's perfectly fine. But on the other hand, the person may love your spouse just as much as they love you and want this to just be a gift to both of you. But they're listing you because you're their relative and they want you to receive it. And in that case, maybe it is a joint gift that goes into a joint account. And it just depends.
And just because it's individual, I've coached clients on, they've got this individual account that was left to them, but if they choose to pull some of it for a joint project, then I just coach them on, that's fine. It's your money. Choose to do what you want to do, but you now are making it joint.
It's joint funds. Yeah. And if you ever do down the road get a divorce, then that's going to be money that is considered money that belongs to both of you, and you're going to go halvesies on that.
Or the hybrid approach, which is kind of what I still very much adopt. But I think, Court, you still have a little bit, but you said yours is kind of dormant right now. Yeah. Mine honestly kind of has been lately as well. But it's where you have that joint account for shared expenses. You have those individual for personal spending.
And like I said earlier, you may, once kids are involved, you may be introducing custodial accounts for your kids. So you may have multiple accounts, one for each of your kids. You may have a joint account. You may have a Katie account, a Daniel account, and you may have have a custodial account for each of your twins.
Yeah. When I first set mine up this way, I really wanted to keep some of my money separate that I could spend how I wanted to spend without Daniel having to be up in my business about it. And now that we've been married for a while, and it's one of those, I kind of am like, the only time I would really use it is if I don't want him to see I'm buying him a Christmas gift. Because if you start thinking, oh, I want to give this money because I'm going to loan Cameron $1,000 because he's down on his luck, that when you start doing that, you kind of start questioning yourself, like, this should probably be a conversation that I tell Daniel I'm doing this. And so I think sometimes with that, when you have those personal accounts, you need to question, are you doing this just because you don't want your spouse to see, like, I went to Starbucks 5 times today? Or are you doing it because you're actually hiding some charge you're doing? And if you're hiding, then that may be more of an internal thing. You need to be like, why am I doing this? Why am I hiding this? Because at the end of the day, we're a partnership, and me doing this, what is the financial impact that could have on the overall family? Okay, I mean, this was kind of trying to be a little different from our other episode where we talked about dividing your accounts up. It really is personal. You've got to figure out what's best. And now, again, with everything, what works for you right now may not be the best option in 5 years, in 10 years.
You may have to reevaluate.
You got to reevaluate.
With a different solution.
Exactly.
You are froggy today.
He's very froggy.
Listeners, Court is leaning back in his chair. His feet are kicked up on another chair. And
He's got some nice boots.
No care in the world. Yeah, very nice boots.
Very nice boots. Does your wife know about your boots?
Yes. Robin recently bought me boxes to put all my shoes in. And she was going to do me a favor and like put the boxes together and put my shoes in the boxes. And she basically just got tired.
You got too many shoes.
I do. I have a shoe problem.
Okay, we're going to bullseye this up. We have talked a lot about bank accounts. And so ultimately, there's no one size fits all solution when it comes to managing finances in marriage. I think the importance is that you do manage your finances in your marriage. It's not fun. It's not a sexy conversation. Do not talk about it on Valentine's Day. Like, that's not the fun time. But
ooh la la.
I have had several clients that have had, like, we have our, monthly budget meeting, or we have our little finance conversation. You may not have to have those dedicated times, but you need to at least have some conversation that you are talking actively about your finances, what works best for you. And if you don't really know where to go, then that's where you can talk to an outside source like us. We can kind of help give our opinion, but then ultimately you go back and customize what works for you. And so whether it's choosing all joint, separate, or that hybrid approach, the key is to find a system that works for you, foster that trust, support your financial goals, and respect both partners' needs. Reevaluate if needed.
Oh, ladies and gentlemen, there's the closing bell. You've made it to the end of yet another episode of the Bullcast Podcast. If you liked what you heard and you'd like to hear more, well, why don't you just feel free to go sign up to have our podcast beamed directly to your device every single Thursday at noon. You can do that at any one of your favorite podcast subscription services. If you'd like to find out more about Cortland, Katie, Cameron, or Nicole, please feel free to go to our website. That website is bullcastpodcast.com. We've got our bios up there. We've got information, pictures. We've also got a place where you can drop a comment or suggest a topic you'd like to hear us talk more about. And I mentioned pictures. We do have pictures on Instagram. Our Instagram handle is @BullcastPodcast, and we have an X handle as well. That is @BullcastPodcast. And we have a Facebook page, which is also Bullcast the Podcast. Make sure you put that "the" in there. And finally, ladies and gentlemen, we have mentioned every single week, probably for 245 weeks, that we work at a place called Pickler Wealth Advisors. Well, if you'd like to find out more about us, find out about what we do, find out about what we can do for you, find out about our amazing team, and find out about our boss, David Pickler, please feel free to go to that website. That website is picklerwealthadvisors.com.
That's advisors with an O.
Not an E.
Ladies and gentlemen, I have given you everything you need to go forth, marry, reproduce, get a bank account, and live your life. So for now, I'm Court.
I'm Katie.
I'm Cam.
We're done.